Matthew 5:17 says, I have not come to destroy the law, but I have come to destroy the law. That's the way most people interpret that. It says, I have come to fulfill. In other words, I'm going to do it. You don't have to, therefore I'm destroying it. That's what way most people interpret this. But that's not what he says. I have not come to destroy it, but to fulfill. What does fulfill mean? To complete, amplify. Okay, I'm hearing a lot of different words. It's really simple, folks. I have a dictionary. It's a Jewish dictionary that goes into phrases, the Talmudic phrases and concepts and things like that. And guess what? Those words are in there, to destroy and to fulfill. They're rabbinic terms. To destroy means to give a false interpretation. To fulfill means to give a proper interpretation. If two rabbis are having a debate, and one rabbi gives an interpretation of Torah, and the other one doesn't like it, he disagrees, he thinks that's wrong. He says, you are destroying the Torah. However, if the rabbi was giving a correct interpretation, and he agreed with him, he said, you have fulfilled the Torah. And this is what Yeshua, he was a rabbi, wasn't he? So this is what he was trying to convey to them. What does Yeshua go into after this discussion? He says, anyone who goes and teaches others to not do the Torah is considered least in the kingdom of heaven. Then he goes in and he says, you have heard it said this. In other words, you've heard the Torah interpreted this way. That's destroying the Torah, because now I'm going to fulfill it for you, and this is how you should read it. Read that Matthew 5 in that context sometime when you get home. Take out your Bible. Read Matthew 5:17 to the end of the chapter. James 2:10, I like this one. For whoever keeps the whole law but fails in one point has been guilty of it all. You know what? You blew it once. Forget it. You're done. You're guilty of the whole thing. Why even bother with it? How many of you have heard that before? Oh, almost everybody. For whoever keeps the whole law but fails in one point has become guilty of all of it, so why even bother? You're already guilty. One of the problems is people don't understand Jewish midrash. Midrash, it comes from the root darash, which means to seek, to search out something. And in rabbinic and in Jewish teachings and in studies, when we do midrashes, you make certain claims drawing upon the text. I'm going to give you a similar example from Jewish thought, a similar example to this. If you destroy one life, you have destroyed a universe. That makes sense. Because one individual, his offspring, can populate a world. We saw that with Noah, didn't we? So the Jews say that if you destroy it, what's the purpose of that saying? What is the purpose of that? Sanctity of human life. How important human life is. Don't even take one life, because if you do, you destroy a world. The same thing is being said by Yaakov here 2,000 years ago. He's saying, for whoever keeps the whole law. Now remember what I said earlier the other day about keeping doesn't mean necessarily obedience, but to guard and to protect it, but fails in one point, he breaks it. Okay, in other words, not just he disobeys it, he takes it on the ground and throws it and tramples all over it. He is guilty of all of it. If you take one command and throw it away, you've done it to the entire thing. How many of us here throw any of the commandments away? How many of us obey them 100%? Anybody? I don't see any hands. Nobody? Okay, all right. No, we are not. We have our problems. We make mistakes, and God knows that. What Yaakov is saying here is he's talking about a hard attitude toward the issue. It's not just if you break one, therefore it's worthless. Okay, that's not what he's saying. It's a Jewish midrash. It's trying to understand what the Torah is. Conclusions. This is from Wikipedia. And this is a quote that I found in there. I was really surprised to see it in there. But I was told this exact same thing by a Hebrew scholar from Israel 10 years ago. The exact same thing, what we're going to read here. By the early half of the 20th century, modern scholars reached a nearly unanimous opinion that Aramaic became a spoken language in the land of Israel. By the start of Israel's Hellenistic period in the 4th century BCE, that's 300 to 400 years before Yeshua, and thus Hebrew ceased to function as a spoken language around the same time. However, during the latter half of the 20th century, accumulating archeological evidence and especially linguistic analysis of the Dead Sea Scrolls has qualified the previous consensus. Alongside Aramaic, Hebrew also flourished as a living spoken language. Hebrew flourished until near the end of the Roman period, when it continued on as a literary language by the Byzantine period in the 4th century CE. Although the survival of Hebrew as a spoken language until the Byzantine period is well known among Hebrew linguists, there remains a lag in awareness among some historians who do not necessarily keep up to speed with linguistic research and rely on outdated scholarship. Nevertheless, the vigor of Hebrew is slowly but surely making its way through the academic literature. The Oxford Dictionary of the Christian Church that once said in 1958 in its first edition, Hebrew ceased to be a spoken language around the 4th century BC, now says in 1997 in its 3rd edition, it says, Hebrew continued to be used as a spoken and written language in the New Testament period. You see, in archaeology, and this scholar that I'm talking about, his name is Dr. William Bean, excellent scholar, learned a lot from him. He said, and he works in Israel, he's worked with the Dead Sea Scrolls, works in Jerusalem with a lot of the scholars there. He said that it takes 50 years for what becomes known in Israel to reach here in America. 50 years. That's how long it takes for our scholars here in America to catch up to what's being learned in Israel. Here we have a picture of Yeshua, Jesus. Yesterday I put up the picture about the Last Supper. By the way, I want to mention something about that. I've had some discussions with people afterwards. I had an excellent discussion with somebody after that who was trying to tell me that he was explaining why he believes that was not the Last Supper but another meal. I respect that. He and I disagree. A lot of you and I disagree on issues. That's okay. And it fosters discussion. We had a little debate going on about it. And it was fun. There's nothing wrong with that. We can have differences of opinions, but let's have fun with it. You know, the rabbis used to say, if you're studying Torah and you're not laughing, you're doing something wrong. Got to be laughing. You got to have a good time when you're doing it. We may disagree on the Last Supper of when it was, but that's okay. I don't expect everybody in here to believe every word I say. And also I wanted to add, out of my last 2 teachings that I did, if you disagree with something, great. Go find out why. Come and tell me. Maybe you know something I don't. But what I do not like is a person saying, I don't believe that. Why? Because I don't. No evidence. No looking into it. It's just flat out, it just doesn't agree with my theology, is what he's saying. He's interpreting the Bible according to his theology. Anyway, this picture here is what we all grew up with. But this is not the Yeshua. Like I did with the Last Supper, there are things that are missing in there. There's no talit. He's wearing Greek clothing. What you have been taught, what we have all been taught, is really what we've been taught is that Jesus is a Greek philosopher wearing Greek clothes, teaching Greek philosophy in the Greek language. That is what we have been taught. But he is a Jew who's speaking the Hebrew language, teaching Hebraic thought from the Tanakh. That is who he is. He's a rabbi. He would be wearing talit, but we never learned those images of him. Aside from the issue of what language the New Testament was originally written, the primary question should be, what language did Yeshua and his Talmudim speak when teaching? If they taught in Hebrew, then we must understand his teachings from a Hebraic perspective, not through the Greek. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun.